Welcome to Cinema 5D on the Couch, the talk show with filmmakers and industry leaders. Brought to you by G Technology, Rode Microphones, Movidium, Film Convert, and FNV.
So Connor, any recent productions that you want to talk about where you might have used different kind of lights?
Different kind of lights. I mean, one I could talk about, it's jumping a little farther back, but it was kind of the first project where I brought on LEDs completely. And with that one, it's kind of, as I mentioned earlier, it was the first time where I could see the benefits of having an LED light. It was a production for a house out of a motion graphic house out of Chicago called Leviathan. And they were creating a little narrative that was to play at a motion graphics festival. And for this, it was a time-sensitive shoot, so we had to be pretty mobile, and we were jumping around from set to set. So I had brought on our portable Z180 lights that you can throw in a backpack and also link them together, as well as some of our K4000 panels. And it just showed me that, say, for that, I lit it as a gaffer. So before, if I wanted to make a slight adjustment, it was, we had to run a stinger, we had to have the camera wait on someone. But with this, I could literally, while they were still talking about direction on camera, I could grab a light, throw it on a stand, throw a battery on it, and tuck it in a corner. Something I couldn't have done with a hot light. And also, one of the cool features with LEDs is that they usually have, for all the FNV ones, they usually have, FNV do, but most LEDs have dimmers built in. So tungsten lights, that's hard to do. HMIs, you can adjust in steps. And some fluorescents, some can, some cannot, but it's usually just triggering banks of the tubes. But with this, it's like having an inline dimmer to a tungsten light at all times. So not only does that help for effects, they're as I mentioned, a motion graphics house. So we were using the lights to supplement like these glowing digital screens that kind of were holographic. So we could use those inline to create these effects, these gags, but also in terms of getting your ratios correct on set, it really allows you to either dial up or dial down in a matter of seconds what you need to keep your shots consistent throughout the shoot. So that was kind of a first one that I had looked into. And most recently, I just shot a little narrative piece where as well we had LED lights, and I was able to take on our new 2x1s. And for me, that was great because I could use these as key lights. Sometimes when I'm using lighting a big area, I would need either an HMI or to gang multiple panels together just to generate a high key light. And now with these new 2x1s, you're able to throw it through a 4x4 silk, and you could light up a whole room. So the larger panels, and as I kind of mentioned, for me, what I'd need is a higher LED light to really completely change out my whole kit to be LEDs. But as you had mentioned earlier, I just went on a high speed shoot that just couldn't have achieved it with LEDs. Although LEDs are great where you could shoot at high frame rates and you're not going to get a flicker issue because of the rate of which they refresh, which can be an issue, say, with HMIs. So I had to revert back to tungsten lights and burnt myself a couple times, which I hadn't done in a while. But I think that's just a brief overview of what I've been doing.
Cool. I think that's a good point. I mean, I also recently had the flicker issue with HMIs on a Red Epic shoot with, I don't know, it was like 220 frames per second or something. And sometimes they even flicker, although you have them, on the deflicker setting, basically.
Sure.
And then
it's a flicker-free ballast.
Yeah, and then you actually only see it in playback, which is kind of annoying.
Well, those ballasts are so heavy that, people can, pick them up, throw them around, or they drop them because they're so heavy, and that could affect the internals, which then can result in that flickering. And I guess one thing I also should mention is we did a car scene in this recent narrative, and I've been wanting to do one for a while because now you can get LED lights that are the size of a phone, and I was able to just pocket them in the dashboard to give the illumination of the dashboard, and then we use some larger things as a main key. And we have these ring lights, which I use as 2 headlights in the back, so it was a perfect round source, which I thought was funny. Yeah, just being able to pocket stuff and not having to run wires allows you to do a lot more in a lot less time.
And I think a lot of productions look down on, LEDs in the beginning, and now everybody's using them because of cameras that are very light sensitive. So I shot with Rodney Charters 2 years ago, and he told us that, he did 24 the series, and they shot that on 35mm film with obviously a lot on location stuff. But they had to change all the lights everywhere because they weren't bright enough for 35mm. And now when he goes out shooting on other TV series like Shameless or Dallas, which rarely is as low key as 24 was, but anyway, they just use LED lights in the car. They just don't run any wires anymore, and they use practicals, all that kind of stuff that just wasn't possible before. And I think in that way it's great that LED makes us more mobile. It's probably not as bright yet, but the cameras are so light sensitive now that you can actually shoot almost anywhere. I mean, if you look at a Sony A7S, like the cameras we're using here, we could practically switch off all these lights, all your lights, and still keep on shooting if we wanted to, because they're so crazy light sensitive.
Yeah, agree. I think the lights more and more become just for shaping and just for making a light design, but it's not really to illuminate everything. So with the sensitivity, you can illuminate the whole scene, and then you just shape the light and light the scene by this light design.
I think with some of these new cameras, it's more like, it's not like somebody who's lighting something, but more who is taking the light away sometimes. Because that's the tiniest amount. I mean, if you have cameras with a native ISO of 3200, that means you need a lot of filters to actually be able to shoot outside. And when you shoot inside with lights, you need to use all kinds of flags to get the light exactly where you want it, because the tiniest amount of spill will already be noticed by the sensor.
Sure. I think, you bring up a great point. A lot of cinematography, in my opinion, is not it's painting with light, but it's also with shadow much more than anything. And light does allow you to accent things, which bring other things into shadow. But kind of in terms of the camera sensitivity, I find it neat that you can. How I always shoot is I first get frame, and then I'll see what's at play and what's available, and usually try to introduce as little light as necessary for the most part, just to keep things natural. And it is interesting with the higher sensitivity cameras where you could be out, on a night shoot outside, and you could really use the ambience that's allocated to you just through spill to light a scene, which is mind-boggling. Usually, to make natural lights in play, it's either you're using it when it's via the sun. Otherwise, to use anything nighttime, you had to pretty much recreate that with a lot of ambience to the scene.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, what you mentioned, that using as little light as possible is quite essential. I mean, the traditional way of shooting with 35mm cameras was to enter a place, exchange all the bulbs for stronger ones, and replace everything to recreate that mood, because the actual mood of a bar scene was not, you couldn't capture that on the camera because of the sensitivity.
You'd walk in and it looked like a totally different place by regular eye.
Exactly.
But on camera it looks much different.
And that's I was on some of these films that when I started out, when I was working on productions where we shot on 35mm film, I was always like, why? And I was kind of used to this from mini DV cameras, which weren't very light sensitive as well. But now it's more like, what do you take away to augment that mood that's already there, or what do you do to reduce any flicker issues you might have with normal tubes and stuff like that. So thanks for watching this segment of Cinema 5D on the couch. If you want to hear more from Connor and Mark from FNV, please tune in for the next segment of this show. And also thanks to our dear sponsors. That's G Technology, Rode Microphone, Movidium.com, Film Convert, and FNV. Thanks for watching.